You're listening to Scary Sleep Stories presents The Dark Hours.
The world outside is hushed now, isn't it? The day's cacophony replaced by the soft hum of your own thoughts. A comfortable quiet. A peaceful stillness. But sometimes, silence is just a deeper kind of noise. A heavy blanket that smothers the familiar. And beneath it, faint echoes, chilling whispers, things that stir only when the light fades. Tonight, as the last vestiges of your waking world slip away, let these stories find you. Let them coil around your senses. And let them show you what lurks in the quiet corners of the night. Because once the quiet has a voice, it never truly leaves. Story 1: The Drawer of Lost Things. It started with the apartment. A small, cozy place on the third floor of an old brownstone. Perfect for Clara. She'd unpacked everything, settled in, felt the comforting embrace of her new home. Every book on the shelf, every utensil in its proper spot, every piece of clothing neatly folded. Everything had a place. Except for one drawer. It was in the old wooden dresser in her bedroom, a piece that came with the apartment. A dark, heavy oak dresser, its surface scarred with decades of use. The top right drawer. It looked normal, antique even, with a tarnished brass pull that glinted dully in the morning light. But it wouldn't open. Not for anything. She tugged, she pulled, she even tried a little. WD-40, hoping to loosen some ancient mechanism. She used a flathead screwdriver to gently pry at the edges. Nothing. It felt fused shut, as if the wood itself had become one solid, impenetrable piece. No seam, no give. Just a flat, unyielding barrier. She mentioned it casually to the landlord, old Mr. Henderson, when he came by to fix a leaky faucet. He just shrugged, a nervous, almost dismissive laugh escaping him. Been like that since I bought the building, ma'am. Decades. Just don't worry about it. Probably. Warped with age. His eyes, however, darted away from hers, a flicker of something unreadable, something akin to apprehension in their depths, before he quickly changed the subject. Clara tried to forget it. She really did. But the drawer became an obsession. A small, persistent itch in the back of her mind. Why wouldn't it open? What was inside? Why did the landlord seem so uncomfortable? The more she thought about it, the more a vague, unsettling sense of unease settled in, a cold finger tracing patterns on her spine. It was always there, a silent, unyielding presence in her bedroom, a dark secret lurking in plain sight. Then, things started to disappear. Small things at first. Trivial items that she might genuinely misplace. A favorite silver earring she always wore, leaving her with an odd, unbalanced feeling throughout the day. Her spare house key, usually left in a small dish by the front door, just gone. The little ceramic bird her sister had given her, a delicate blue figurine that sat on her nightstand, vanished without a trace. She blamed herself. Initially. Being disorganized, right? But she was meticulously neat, a creature of habit. These weren't things she lost. These were things that simply weren't there anymore. The disappearances escalated. Her eyeglasses, moments after she took them off and set them beside her tea. Her wallet, found empty inside her purse the next morning, but with no sign of forced entry, no indication of a thief. A novel she was halfway through, its pages marked with a bookmark, simply gone from her bedside table. Each time a cold, tightening knot formed in her stomach. She'd search, frantically tearing apart her perfectly organized apartment, but they were simply gone. No forced entry. No broken windows. No signs of anything amiss, no clue as to how or why. Just gone. And the drawer, always the drawer, remained stubbornly, unnervingly shut. One particularly stormy night, the wind howling like a hungry beast around the old brownstone, the rain drumming against her windows like a frantic, desperate hand, she was startled by a soft, almost imperceptible sound coming from the dresser. A faint click. Then another, almost like a sated sigh, a soft exhalation of contentment. It was so subtle. She almost dismissed it as the house settling, or a gust of wind. She froze. Every nerve ending in her body screamed for her to dismiss it, to pull the covers over her head. But she couldn't. The sound had come from the top right drawer. The locked one. The impossible one. Heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs, she crept towards it, flashlight in hand. Her breath shallow and quick. As the beam, a trembling circle of light, hit the drawer, she saw it. A tiny, almost invisible crack had appeared along its top edge, a hairline fracture in the dark wood. And through that crack, a sliver of darkness, deeper and more profound than any shadow in the room. A void. Then, from within that impossible darkness, she heard it. A whisper. Faint, dry, like crumbling leaves rustling on a forgotten autumn path. It wasn't words, not exactly. More. Like a sibilant hiss, a contented murmur, a sound of pleasure. And then, a sound that made her blood run cold, the sound that confirmed her darkest fears. A soft jingling. The distinct, unmistakable sound of her missing silver earring, clinking gently against something else, something metallic and unknown, within the impenetrable depths of the drawer. She stumbled backward, a strangled gasp catching in her throat, dropping the flashlight. It clattered to the floor, rolling to cast a distorted shadow of the dresser against the wall. The drawer. It was taking her things. Not just taking, but keeping them. Collecting them. And it was alive. A hungry, silent entity lurking in her bedroom. She didn't try to open it again. The thought alone filled her with a profound, debilitating terror. Instead, she pushed her heavy bed against the dresser, blocking her bedroom door. Then piled other furniture, a nightstand, a chair, against it, creating a makeshift barricade. She even tried to tape the drawers shut with layers of duct tape, as if a flimsy piece of adhesive could hold back whatever dark, insatiable appetite lurked inside. But every night, as she lay in bed, huddled under her covers, listening to the relentless rhythm of the rain, she heard it. The soft, sated sigh from behind the barricade. The faint jingling of her lost possessions, a sinister lullaby. And sometimes, when the apartment was at its most silent, she swore she heard a new sound, muffled but distinct, coming from the drawer's depths. A new click. The sound of her own heartbeat slowing. And she knew, with a certainty that froze her to the core, that one day, she too would become one of the drawer's lost things. A new treasure, added to its dark, ever-growing collection. A permanent resident in its impossible void. The man at the crossing. You ever notice something once, just once, and then, somehow, it becomes part of your life? Like your brain marks it as important without your permission, a piece of information. Irrevocably etched into your subconscious, surfacing at the strangest times? That's precisely how it started with the man at the crossing. A mundane morning. Commute transformed into something indelible. I'd seen him for the first time in passing. I was late for work, rushing toward the train station, half soaked from a surprise drizzle that had ambushed the city. My focus was on not slipping, on making it to the platform before the 3:20. And then, he was just there, standing beside the railway crossing gate, unmoving, like he'd been carved from stone, a sentinel in the sudden downpour. He wore a plain gray coat, worn at the elbows, blending with the muted colors of the overcast sky. His shoes were scuffed, heavy, as if they'd seen countless journeys. A black umbrella, tightly closed and tucked under one arm, seemed more like a prop than a tool for the rain. And there was this strange, absolute stillness in his posture, a profound sense of waiting, not for a train's arrival, but for something far more precise, something only he seemed privy to. He didn't shift, didn't fidget, didn't even seem to breathe. I remember thinking, as I hurried past. Odd place to stand? The thought was fleeting, dismissed by the urgency of my schedule. Then the commuter train thundered past, a blur of metal and sound, and when it cleared, he had simply vanished behind it. I didn't see him again for days. The incident faded, a strange but unimportant memory, until I did. At first, I thought it was a coincidence, my brain trying to find patterns where none existed. Perhaps a different coat, a different guy entirely. But the way he stood, the posture, unmistakable. His hands clasped in front of him, almost reverently. His chin slightly raised, eyes fixed on the empty tracks like they held answers no one else could see, a secret language etched in rusted steel. It was uncanny. I started noticing the time. Always around 3:17 p.m. Never a minute before, never a minute after. Always at the exact same spot, just to the left of the old signal post, where the rusted white paint was peeling off in curled strips like ancient parchment. It was a landmark now. His landmark. 3 times a week, I passed that spot on my way to catch the 3:30 train. And every single time I saw him, always standing there, always alone, never speaking, never moving, a silent, unblinking fixture in the urban landscape. At first, I thought he was just strange, maybe eccentric, a local oddity. But then came the obsession, a creeping, insidious curiosity that started to consume my thoughts. Who was he? What was he doing? I started leaving the house earlier so I could watch from a distance, hidden behind the newspaper stand or a parked car. I stopped carrying headphones. I wanted to hear if he spoke, if he made any sound at all. I even worked up the courage to ask the crossing guard once, a gruff old man who usually just grunted at passers-by. "Hey, that guy over there, gray coat? You know who he is? The one who stands by the signal post?" The old man looked up from his perpetually creased newspaper, squinting at me over his spectacles. "What guy?" His voice was raspy, laced with years of cigarette smoke. I gestured frantically towards the spot, but the man wasn't there. The space beside the signal post was empty, just a patch of weeds. Strange. I must have missed him that day. Or maybe he didn't show up. Maybe my mind was playing tricks on me, seeing things that weren't there. But the very next day, 3:17 sharp, he was back. Standing there. Still. Watching. And then one day, I stood near enough to see his face. Closer than I ever intended to be. Drawn by an invisible thread. It was older than I expected. Not elderly, but time-worn, etched with the passage of many years. Lines ran deep across his forehead and around his eyes, which were pale, almost gray like his coat, reflecting the dull sky. But the odd thing was that his gaze wasn't just at the tracks, not broadly. He was watching a specific point, just a few feet ahead of the crossing, past the gate. The exact spot where the tracks curved slightly before heading toward the station, disappearing into the distance. His focus was absolute, unwavering. That's when I noticed something that changed everything, twisting my casual observation into something deeply unsettling. He was mouthing words. No sound. No breath. Just the faintest, rhythmic motion of his lips, like he was reciting something under his breath. A prayer, maybe? Or a memory, endlessly repeated. But it wasn't random. It was rhythmic, a silent incantation, perfectly timed with something I couldn't perceive. I tried to read his lips, to make sense of the silent syllables. Nothing. My brain scrambled. To find meaning, to find a pattern. But I swear, in that moment, standing just feet from him, I felt something I couldn't explain, like I'd walked into a room someone else had just left, and their presence still lingered, a phantom warmth and chill at once. He didn't look at me. His gaze remained fixed on that specific point on the tracks. But I felt seen. I felt observed somehow. As if I was the one being watched, and he already knew everything about me. I stepped back, stumbled a little, my unease turning to genuine fear. And that's when the train arrived. Not early. Not late. Exactly on time. 3:20. It roared into existence, a deafening wave of sound and motion, passing between us like a physical barrier, roaring and clattering and loud enough to make me forget how long I'd been staring, how strange the man truly was. When it cleared, the train's tail lights fading into the distance, he was gone, as if the train itself had consumed him. That night I couldn't sleep. The silence of my apartment felt oppressive. I kept thinking, what if he isn't waiting for the train at all? What if he's watching for something that only he knows about? Something that arrives with the train, or perhaps something that the train merely reveals by passing? It's easy to call things odd and forget them. Harder when they keep showing up again and again, especially when they hint at a deeper, darker truth. The next morning, driven by a growing, desperate need for answers, I searched online. Local forums, dusty old news clippings from the digital archives, train incident reports. My fingers flew across the keyboard, typing in keywords. Crossing accident October. That's when I found something. A single, grainy article from a local newspaper, dated 22 years ago. At the exact crossing where I saw the man, a woman and her small child were struck and killed. A horrific accident. Malfunctioning gates. The warning bells didn't sound. The train didn't stop. The article described the mother, frantically trying to push her child's stroller across the tracks, desperate to escape, just moments before the unstoppable impact. I looked at the date. October 14th. Same date it was when I first saw the man. I hadn't even realized it. That gave me chills. A profound, aching coldness that went beyond mere temperature. And something else, guilt. For watching this man like he was a mere curiosity, a strange spectacle. Maybe he was her husband. Maybe her father. Maybe he came there every single year on that specific, tragic date to remember, to bear witness, to mourn. It would have made perfect, heartbreaking sense. A man lost in grief, forever tied to a moment of unimaginable sorrow. If only I hadn't seen him again the very next day. And the next. And the next. Not just on October 14th. Every time I passed. 3 times a week. Always. It stopped being about curiosity. It stopped being about shared grief. It became obsession. A spiral of dread and fascination. I started writing it down, what he wore, exactly how he stood, which precise direction he looked. I started filming him covertly from my phone, hidden in my pocket. Every single time, the same ritual, the same unwavering precision. 3:17 p.m. He arrives. Unseen, unheard, he's just there. 3:20 p.m. The train passes, a fleeting, thundering barrier. 3:22 p.m. He's gone. Without a trace. One day, the obsession became too much. I broke the pattern. My own pattern. I didn't catch my train. I stood on the platform watching him, then, fueled by a strange mix of fear and desperate need for answers, I shouted across the tracks, my voice thin, against the ambient street noise. "Who are you?" He didn't move. Didn't flinch. His gaze remained fixed on that invisible point. He didn't even acknowledge my presence. I waited until the 3:20 train passed, a roaring defiance to my fear. The moment the last car cleared, I crossed the tracks, running towards him, determined to get answers. But he was gone again. The spot was empty. No trace. Just the peeling paint on the signal post. And the endless, gleaming tracks. And I was left on the other side, heart racing, the silence of his disappearance louder than the departed train. That night, I had the first dream. I was standing at the crossing, the rain falling just as it had that first day, but I was the only one there. A profound loneliness enveloped me. Then I heard the distant rumble of the train. And then a sound that froze my blood, a child's laughter, bright and innocent, carried on the wind. And a woman calling a name I didn't recognize, her voice laced with panic. I turned, and there he was, the man, standing directly behind me, so close I could feel a chill emanating from him. He was whispering something I couldn't hear, even though his mouth was next to my ear. His breath, cold and stale, brushing against my skin. His eyes, pale and depthless, were fixed on the tracks ahead. His lips moved, forming the silent words I'd seen him mouth so many times. When I woke up, gasping for air, I couldn't shake it. The dream felt too real, too visceral. There was a pull, like the dream hadn't quite ended, like a part of me was still at the crossing. I found myself getting dressed, almost involuntarily, walking back to the crossing, drawn by an invisible current. Just standing there. Same spot he always did, to the left of the old signal post. It felt wrong. Like sitting in someone else's seat, inhabiting a space that wasn't mine. But I waited. Just to see. To confirm. To understand. 317. Nothing. 318. Nothing. 319. Still nothing. My heart pounded, a drum against my ribs. 320. The train came. This time, no one disappeared. No man. Just me. Standing there, alone, as the train roared past. The silence after it left was absolute. That was 2 years ago. Since then, he hasn't come back. I check. Almost every day. Sometimes it's a detour on my way to work, sometimes a special trip. Always around 3:17. No sign of him. It's like whatever he was waiting for finally arrived. Or maybe I took his place. Maybe I filled a void I shouldn't have. Sometimes I stand there, not even realizing why, drawn by an invisible string. Sometimes I mouth the same words I saw him say, the silent syllables forming on my lips, without knowing what they mean, without understanding the prayer or the memory. And sometimes, when the train passes, or when the shadows lengthen, I feel eyes on me, from across the tracks, watching, wondering why I'm there now, why I've taken his post. So if you ever find yourself near the old station crossing, the one with the peeling signal post, when the late afternoon sun casts long, skeletal shadows, look around, check the time, and if you see someone in a gray coat standing just to the left of the signal post, waiting, with that peculiar stillness, don't wave, don't speak, don't try to follow, don't even meet his gaze. Just catch your train, and forget what you saw, because once you notice him, you may never stop, and then you might find yourself waiting too. You've been listening to Dark Hours. If you enjoyed this story, there are more waiting. Not all stories haunt, but some stay with you, and some are still unfolding.